Now, who's ready to stop talking about food plots and planting food plots? You know, my favorite time of the year is when we get into hunting season. That's what kind of builds all this. That's where my background comes from, is just hunting and hunting strategy for whitetails, and whether it's public or private land. That's my roots. Public land, my roots, and then private land, back and forth. The bottom line is I love this time of the year where we can start to shift. We still have some food plot, a couple of them coming out, late ones. One that I even forgot, but it's been interesting with the launch of the seed company and WHS Wildlife Blends. We had to focus on that a little bit, but no more than any other year. But still, even with the company and considering that, now we have switchgrass coming out soon. Check our website for that. I have a blend of mine that I really can't wait to offer to you guys. That'll be available the last week of August. But bottom line is that I like whitetail strategy. And I love hunting. And that being said, what's around the corner for most of us, and by the time some people see this, it might have already come, is opening day of bow season. And opening day of bow season is always a special time. I can remember tightening our broadheads and aligning our vanes back in the day in the 80s, and just get everything dialed in, every set screw, making sure that everything, I even have a scar on my finger that's right here from tightening broadheads and realigning them and slipping and cutting myself with a Thunderhead 125 back in the day. So all this excitement building up, and over the years I've learned a lot of patience when it comes to the opening day. And it kind of brings up a point, you know, Michigan, October 1st, that's what we dreamed of. And it could be during the middle of the week, could be on the weekend. Other bow season openers like Minnesota and Wisconsin here, Minnesota is usually a week after Wisconsin, but they're mid-September and they're on Saturdays. Others are on September 1st, no matter what day it is. And so for some of you, it's during the week. Some of you, it's on the weekend. And I look at it like, you know, the season's a marathon, not a sprint. I think far too many people look at it like a sprint. For example, the opposite of that, and I love the hunting public guys. I talk about those guys all the time. They're going into a public land setting for about a week, 5 days, and then they're moving on to the next spot. For them, it's a sprint because they're literally only hunting that state most of the time, not all the time, but they're hunting that state, that chunk of public land for 5 days, and they're moving on. So for them, they have to score in 5 days. And so a little bit different than the vast majority of us that really have to be selective on when we actually go out into the woods, and we have to manage a spot for weeks or months at a time because we want to be able to come back and hunt and not spook these deer out. So we have to make smart decisions when it comes to should we sit or should we not. And when it comes to opening day, there's some of you out there that because it's on a weekend, you don't have a lot of vacation time. That's when you go sit. And for those of you, you know, maybe don't even need to watch this video, because if you're just going out and sitting because that's the time you have, I fully appreciate that and respect that. You got to get out in the woods. But for those of you that have the opportunity to be a little bit patient, maybe even push it off a weekend, I think there's better times to hunt than the actual opening day. Meaning your opening day is on October 1st. It's 90 degrees. It's bad conditions. It's 40-mile-an-hour winds. It's heavily raining. Why push it if you can wait for a better day that's only 4 days later? And we'll talk about what to look for when it comes to those better days. But I want you to start to get in your head that unlike opening day of gun season, I love opening day of gun season. It's a thrill to me. It just brings back such great memories. Some people get discouraged with gun season, but some of our best hunts are during gun season because while everyone else is pushing the woods and driving the woods and being invasive and going all in for opening day, we are not. We're off to the side. We're getting into bedding areas very early. We're making sure our downwind is checked. We're not shooting does on opening day. We're not shooting does for the first few days unless we have a buck on the ground. We just turn the rifle towards that. And I sometimes hunt about half the bow season openers in Wisconsin. Or gun season openers, I hunt with my bow. I just love being out there. I love the shots. It's exciting. I love hearing that and knowing that our property is filling up with deer because we have good fall habitat improvements. Even on 30, 40 acres, you can do that. It sets yourself apart from a 400-acre neighbor right next door that's being invasive. You can do that. That's what I teach. That's what I love about hunting strategy is there's so much more to strategy than just putting some food plots out and thinking you're going to have every deer in the area, but using trail cameras, whatever it might be. So I like looking at, unlike gun season, when it comes to bow season, what is the best day to hunt for my opening day, not necessarily meaning on opening day. So let's say it's on the 1st, there's better weather coming for the 7th. I just wait till that time because, again, the season is a marathon, not a sprint. So do you have to hunt the actual date of the opener? Some of you do. I don't blame you for getting out there. And while we're on it, this is not an all-day sit kind of thing. This is get in, hunt a morning spot, which is relating to bedding, hunt an evening spot, which is relating to food. A lot of times people are going out, they're wasting half the day because they're in either a morning spot all day, or they're in an afternoon food source spot where they go in the morning, they spook out the deer, and those deer don't come back in the evening. So you have to be very careful about planning those all-day sets, where you're at. You still have to be smart with this is a morning stand, this is an evening stand, and why. No rush to get out there, except again, if you have to. But certainly the rush comes in, again, going back to those public land hunting opportunities. You have a nice mature buck that you've pegged and targeted on public land and a little honey hole. You might want to get out there, depending on the number of the hunters in the area, and try to get out and get a chance at him before other hunters do. And so sometimes you have to push the envelope, no different than if you're there for 5 days and that's the only time you're going to hunt that state, that public land, and you're moving on. Different though than 95% of the rest of us hunters out there that have to manage a spot and not spook deer on that spot and hunt. So there is a rush sometimes. Public land, you have a buck targeted, you want to get in there. Sorry. And look, Dylan's always playing with stuff in the background. Jeez.
Short pockets.
Anyways, but what was it? Was that sound like a gun? Was that a pistol?
Camera battery.
Okay. That was pretty loud.
It was.
It was a good one.
Startled you.
It did. I'm a little jumpy, I guess. But anyways, there is that rush on public land where you have to get out there. I can appreciate that. Also, certainly, if you have to get out there because that's your time off, wouldn't want anyone to ever not go out in the woods and enjoy themselves. But there really isn't a rush when it comes down to it. And number 3, I'm looking for the best available weather. A lot of people get hung up on, even on cold fronts, it has to be a certain temperature, and that couldn't be, further from the truth. Really, when it comes to temperature, it's all relative. So someone in Florida, it's been 97, 95, 97, 98, and all of a sudden it's high 87. That's a big cold front. There's probably a lot of weather that pushed down that weather to get it there. Maybe some thunderstorms, tropical depression, whatever it might have been. But there's a lot that took place, including wind, rain, weather, to push that temperature down. It's the same in the north. If the average daytime highs are around 70, all of a sudden it's 58. That's a great temperature drop. No different than if the average daytime highs are 40 and now it's 28. It's all relative. It still puts deer in their bedding areas, doesn't allow them to go out and feed during the middle of the night because it's windy, it's rainy, it's stormy. They're missing quality feedings out of those 5 feedings they like in a 24-hour period. So it's really creating a situation of great hunting when the weather clears and that temperature drops. They're burning energy because the temperature is dropping. They're burning energy because they're missing feeding, and they're burning energy because they're creatures of stress. They don't like the stress of a lot of deer. They don't like the stress of weather and loud noises, and they don't like the stress of people. All of those burn energy for whitetails. That's why they actually literally move snowmobile trails around deer yards in northern parts of the country because they found it burns stress off whitetails in those deer yards when it pushed those deer away, or they had to deal with that stress going through, and it takes days of life that they could have otherwise lived off the end of a long winter. So even that, game managers are very wary of deer being creatures of stress. So when it comes to big weather coming through, always remember that calm, cold side of the backside of a front, regardless of the pressure or anything going on. When you have those major changes that take place, then regardless of what's going on, then it can create some great hunting opportunities. So when you're looking at that for your early season calendar, and you see opening day is beautiful and it meets these conditions, big fronts just went through, wind, rain, it's a little cooler, outstanding regardless of the temperature. Just looking for a drop of 7-8 degrees and higher. Of course, those are big drops. When they're 30 degree temperature drops, then some extreme weather went through. A lot of times 40 mile an hour winds, 50 mile an hour winds. The bigger the better. But even those smaller 7-8 degree temperature changes, something happened, and it's going to set up great whitetail movement on the back side. So when you're looking at my opening day is the 15th of September, and you see a giant front taking place on the 17th, 18th, and you see those cooler temperatures right after that, and you can go out and hunt, and there's no rush for some particular reason to get out in the woods, then waiting and intruding on the woods for that first time for the year is a great thing to do. And I'll add number 4. Do you know why we have the October lull? You know why that takes place? It's not because the habitat changes. You know, sometimes deer shift to their fall ranges, the bucks always do. But I hope you're hunting fall ranges, you're promoting them on private land, because those that have the bucks during the summer typically don't have them in the fall. So you should be finding that on public land or creating that opportunity. Deer go into patterns that move them to other lands because they're not actually sitting and not moving during the daylight, during a quote lull. The October lull, or any lull, takes place after hunting pressure is applied. How many of us have seen after opening day of bow season, all of a sudden the deer just go into nocturnal mode? And it's not that they're nocturnal, it's just that they moved a half mile or 3/4 mile away because of hunting pressure, and they're moving somewhere else during the daylight because they still need to feed 5 times in a 24-hour period. They're still going to react to major weather influencers. And bottom line is, if you set your opening day to either the opener because you have to, or because it's good weather, or you wait for that best available weather within that first week, then you're going to really set yourself up for success and go into stands on unsuspecting deer with the perfect weather conditions and have all the cards in your favor going in for your first hunt of the year. And you know what? That's the way I hunt all year. So I'm really looking at that roller coaster of weather, and doesn't matter if it's the early season, opener, during the October lull, during the pre-rut, the rut lockdown, the peak rut, the post-rut, the secondary rut, and even the latter portions of gun season, going into muzzleloader to late season. I'm hunting the weather because the weather will always guide you to success. That's why I helped develop the algorithm. We infused my algorithm into the HuntWise app for HuntCast. Check it out in the description. But bottom line is, when should your opening day be? If you can actually exercise some patience and have the ability with your resources of time and time off, then I would strongly encourage you to wait for the best available weather in that first week. Go out with confidence and have a great bow season opener for this year and for all the openers to come. Folks, I want to make sure you check out my web class video series, whether it's how to design your food plot program or how to design your property in general. And we have a new one coming out that'll be how to hunt the rut. But these bucks back here are a testament. Some of these bucks go back to 93. They're even in different states. I urge you to check out those web classes so that you can help yourself, help your land, help your hunt. The link is in the description. And also for those that have tried them out, I encourage you to offer some feedback in the comments below. Thank you.